Agile, mobile, shock and awe, philosophies of war, refined since the beginning of time, perfected in the form of stamped steel, flying brass jackets, and the blood of naysayers. Hi. Six Snipes here with the final entry into yet another fantastic season. Having taken extensive measures to catch the release of both the new cutting-edge weapons of the future, I think only fitting to do a 180 and perhaps pay respects to one of which, for all intents and purposes, trailblazed the way for items like the Vector and P90 today. Taking a look at the design that redefined the term submachine gun, this is the UZI, and you're watching Gun Guide. Lacking in the more complete title and oddly actually possessing a slang name identical to its technical classification, the UZI has three letters which more or less stand for all the traits for the making of a classical firearm, that being unending conflict, religious zealots, and most importantly, pissed off intellectuals, all of which are principal in both Israel, its country of origin, on top of the story behind this piece. Uziel Gal, the designer for which it is named, did for SMGs what Kalashnikov did for rifles, in the manner that the market was about to get a 600 rounds per minute powerhouse, which functioned on what we in the scientific community refer to as the next fucking level. Long story short, following the ideologies of the MP40 and grease gun, where the fewest pieces of metal are stamped together to make the cheapest open bolt blowback you've ever seen, the UZI continues this line of thinking, but chooses to opt for a new telescopic bolt system, which more or less equates to a new variable of less inch per gun, and would soon become the norm due to the sheer efficacy of having a weapon half the length of a Thompson with the same ability to completely change the landscape of urban warfare within crime-ridden inner cities. Manufactured by Israeli weapons industries, or else IWI, much like literally all my other favorite guns, the UZI and soon-to-be UZI family would go on to be the earliest renditions of what would consider to be modern-era submachine guns. And you would think with all the background about revolutionizing the industry and being a staple of war in the latter half of the 20th century that the iconic design and stellar performance would really translate over to Insurgency Sandstorm into a very strong pick for your average breacher. And I do too. The reality is that in spite of all the massive shit people seem to keep shoveling onto the obligatory UZI sucks train within the Sandstorm community, I genuinely believe this is probably one of the strongest picks you could utilize as a breacher, and before you try, there is absolutely nothing you can comment that will make me change my mind on this. Coming in at a clean 2 credits, it basically sets the baseline on what you need to pay minimum to have a decent weapon for hardcore breaching and clearing, and no, I'm not counting this piece of shit. For what it boils down to, you have the very decent price of the 600 rounds per minute, something very well established to be gold standard of fire rate, a little under average and oddly arrived upon magazine capacity of 25, not as if 30 doesn't exist, because for another credit you can buy it, which doesn't really help my case, but I digress. At this point, the highly standard 9mm ammunition, basically this makes the exact average weapon for the breachers and perhaps Sandstorm in general. So being the most basic implement possible for what it does, stacked up against the powerhouse that is the P90 or else earlier iterations in the game like the MP7, why the UZI is a preferred pick? I don't know, I just like it.
I just think they're neat.
The reality is, Insurgency Sandstorm's gun sandbox is not exactly the most nuanced system. Seeing someone die in over 4 shots is like seeing a white girl named Jennifer without a Bible verse and Dreamcatcher tattoo pictured in her Instagram bio. Sure, it exists out there somewhere, but good luck finding one. Your personal preference of weapon isn't going to have a massive deficiency of performance in comparison to something like the Honey Badger. Rather, if anything, using something that you like is always going to result in a better experience than the gun that you use because it's just for the one for you to fuck. In earnesty, for the longest time in the earlier days of IS, this was just the shit, primarily because the 50-round drum mag was accessible in core PvP modes such as push, whereas nothing else could really have one, meaning you could have a bullet hose of unprecedented magnitude in this piece, while the MP7 nerds blew their 20-round load faster than you can say my fancy German gun still isn't enough to win me a single world war. Unironically though, being the only SMG I can think of that actually has a true drum magazine, it's basically one of the only 2 guns in the game I would consider using one on, simply because the recoil is so docile that it's hard to tell the difference anyways. These days, for whatever reason, I guess NWI has deemed it that the UZI no longer needs that extra little oomph, so the UZI doesn't get the drum mag and push anymore, and now I play domination. It is what it is. It is what it is. Being the official gun of my thriving little Discord empire of Habibi Stan and having exactly a lot of experience with this piece, I can basically say there's more or less 2 ways to run this thing. Default performance UZI is very whelming. 25 rounds doesn't get spent particularly quick with 600 rounds per minute, and the recoil is very much nothing to write home about. In other words, you're not going to be gushing about the kill-heavy shredding fire rate, but you're also an idiot if you can't pick up a basic double frag with this thing. The iron sights are pretty much exactly what you need to kill people and even function at ranges that even I admit treatment are just not fair for optic users, which I am beginning to find exceedingly hilarious every time I come across another example of this.
I'm coming, King Julian! La 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 la!
Enemy spotted! Counter-terrorists win!
And outside of that, literally every other feature like reload and ADS are more or less the exact average you would assign to it based off of appearance. In summary, decent. The real appeal is of course when you get to the attachments. The first philosophy is of course the heavy machine gunner role. Why let the actual gunner class get kills from the back of the map when you can run up to the front and convert the entire standing population of any given structure's innards to outards? This is obviously done with use of the 50-round magazine, but also a compensator and foregrip, and still manages to be cheaper than the average P90 user's primary alone, and mitigates the small recoil you'd otherwise get from the addition. Of course, with a lot of training, you can really get the maximum performance out of the stellar piece with a real man's optics, such as the ACOG, NWI, ACOG on Wallard Win, and the suppressor because everyone knows having an attachment that makes the barrel longer makes it into a sniper. With the final form of the UZI, you can go sicko mode on entire enemy waves, and for an entire domination match, I just killed pretty much anyone that tried pushing bridge on Tideway without dying a single time. My personal build though might just be the extended mag alone and having 0 other implements to complement the gun, going to show that I'm a huge sucker for classic aesthetic, or perhaps you really just can't improve upon perfection. And remember, it never hurts to utilize all those drop to credits on the cheapest thrill in the game either. You are, after all, a breacher. A good gun. More than a good gun, a great gun. And more than a great gun, one could even say, the best gun. If you watched this far into the video, I'd like to thank you for waiting around 40 days to see this upload and have 0 expectations for you to subscribe for the most inconsistent content you've ever seen. Until next time, when absolutely ever that may be, I'm Six Snipes, this is the legendarily effective UZI, and you've been watching Gun Guide. I'll see you out there in Sandstorm.
Don't fucking do it, man. Oh, man. Fuck you, mother.